everyone. Today we're reading 1 Peter chapter 3. Peter is holding to his pattern of continuing to write about a whole host of issues. And so this is packed full of a lot of different topics. The first one is that Peter is talking about the relationship between wives and husbands. He writes in verses 1-2, he says, "In the same way, you wives must accept the authority of your husbands. Then, even if some refuse to obey the good news, your godly lives will speak to them without any words. They will be won over by observing your pure and reverent lives." So I was reading contextually about this time that there could have been situations where wives were coming to know Jesus. They were choosing to follow Jesus, but their husbands were not. And so they needed instruction on how to continue to live. And Peter says you should continue to submit to his authority because your submission to him is going to be and showing your godly conduct is going to be a tremendous witness of Jesus to them, to their husbands. And so then they may come to know Jesus. They may come to choose to follow Jesus for their own. Now, Peter also gives some instruction to husbands. In verse 7, he says, "In the same way, you husbands must give honor to your wives. Treat your wife with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. Treat her as you should, so your prayers will not be hindered." He says to honor your wives, to treat them with understanding as you walk through life together. And though they may be weaker in a physical sense, that's what Peter was talking about here, though they may be weaker in a physical sense, they are equal to you in this new life in Christ. And that goes back to what Paul tells us in the book of Galatians in chapter 3. He says, "There is no longer Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." So there is no difference between Jew nor Gentile, slave nor free, male or female. Everyone is the same under this new life in Christ. And then Peter, back to 1 Peter, Peter goes on to give a stern warning to husbands. And he says, if you don't honor your wives, if you don't treat them with respect and live with understanding, then he says that God won't pay any attention to your prayers. So he's saying this as a way to say that God takes this really seriously. So even though it's set up that wives should submit to the authority of their husbands, God also holds husband to this standard of relationship that doesn't demean their wives, that doesn't treat them as inferior to them, but truly honors them. And so that's this standard of relationship that God has for wives and husbands. Now, where we're going to end today is Peter's instruction to all Christians. In verses 8-9, he writes this: "Finally, all of you should be of one mind, sympathize with each other, love each other as brothers and sisters, be tender-hearted and keep a humble attitude. Don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing. That is what God has called you to do, and he will grant you his blessing." It can't get any more simple than that. Peter is saying and says as we go further into this chapter that there will be persecution. And you may not be met with a similar character of behavior in response to the way that you choose to live. But God has called us to this way of living. And truthfully, how we act, how we speak, how we interact with others is going to be the greatest testimony of who Jesus is. And so he's saying, consider your actions carefully, consider your words carefully, because how you interact with others, how you live is going to point others to Jesus, is going to represent who Jesus is. And so that's the question today is, how are you going to choose to live? Are you going to choose to live in a way that blends in with how the world lives sometimes that is the easiest route. It doesn't lead to conflict. It doesn't lead to as much persecution. But there's another way to live that is in accordance with how God has called us to live, that's going to lead to a life that is fulfilling, that is a life full of blessing. It's not absent from trials or persecution or hardship, but that will lead to blessing that God gives. And so that's our question today. How are you going to choose to live? Grace and peace to you today. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.
If these devotional videos are helpful to you, subscribe to our channel and click the notification button so you know when we post a new video. And of course, please share them with others.